February 14th, 1933. Bumpy Johnson was outnumbered 12-1. Dutch Schultz had sent his most dangerous crew, Tommy the Executioner, Vento, Marty, Icepick, Delaney, and 10 more killers whose names even the police had never heard. They trapped Bumpy in the Cotton Club basement with no witnesses and no escape. Bumpy was only 27, still learning the game, while Dutch was the most powerful mob boss in New York. Everyone expected the same ending, Bumpy Johnson dead in a basement. But what Dutch didn't understand was that Bumpy Johnson never played by anyone's rules. 90 minutes later, only one of those 12 men walked out alive, and he carried a message that made Dutch Schultz, the man who had killed over 40 people, turn pale. This was the night Bumpy Johnson became untouchable. To understand what happened, you have to understand Harlem in 1933. This was no longer the Harlem Renaissance. The Great Depression had crushed everything. People were desperate, and desperate people gamble, the numbers racket. An illegal lottery was the lifeblood of Harlem. You could bet a nickel and win $50. For people earning $7 a week, that nickel meant hope, and hope was currency. Dutch Schultz saw that currency. A German Jewish mobster from the Bronx who had made millions bootlegging during Prohibition. But Prohibition was ending, and Dutch needed a new empire. So he looked south to Harlem, saw the money flowing through the numbers game, and decided he wanted all of it. There was just one obstacle. Harlem already had rulers. Madame Stephanie St. Clair, the Queen of Numbers, and her enforcer, a young man named Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy wasn't like other muscle. He wasn't just a shooter. He was intelligent, educated himself in prison, reading Shakespeare and philosophy. He understood that respect in Harlem wasn't bought with fear. It was earned with loyalty. When Madame St. Clair's runners were robbed, Bumpy got the money back. When crooked cops tried to shake down black businesses, Bumpy made them disappear, sometimes violently, sometimes by destroying careers and reputations. He was strategic, and he refused to bend the knee to Dutch Schultz. In January 1933, Dutch sent messengers to Harlem. They met Madame St. Clair at her club on 133rd Street. The message was simple work with Dutch: pay tribute or get buried. Madame St. Clair, a Caribbean immigrant who built her empire from nothing, looked at these white men in her club and told them to get out. They turned to Bumpy, standing in the corner, and warned him to be smart. Bumpy didn't move, didn't speak, just stared with the look that made men think about their life insurance. The messengers left and reported back to Dutch Schultz, who had never been told no, especially not by a black woman and her enforcer. He made a decision: burn it all down, starting with Bumpy. He didn't just want him dead. He wanted it public, brutal, unforgettable, the kind of death that forces everyone else to fall in line. February 14th, 1933. Valentine's Day. Bumpy got word that Dutch's men planned to hit Madame St. Clair's main counting house on Lenox Avenue at dawn. Bumpy went to check it out alone. Maybe that was a mistake, or maybe he knew exactly what he was walking into. The Cotton Club basement, not the famous downtown club, but the real after-hours spot where Harlem's players drank, gambled, and settled scores. The basement was storage liquor crates, poker tables, and one narrow staircase, a perfect place for an ambush. At 4:32 a.m., Bumpy walked down the stairs. The room was dark, except for a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. Then he heard the click of safeties coming off 12 guns, 12 men stepping out of the shadows. Tommy the Executioner stepped forward smiling and said, "Dutch sends his regards." Bumpy stood, calm hands at his sides, slowly scanned the room, counted 12, and looked back at Tommy, asking if that was all he sent. The smile faded. That wasn't bravado, it was calculation. Tommy told him he had 5 seconds to beg. Bumpy tilted his head and said, "You're making a mistake." When Tommy said he was about to die, Bumpy replied, "The mistake was thinking he came alone." Hesitation crept in. Tommy glanced at the stairs, then back at Bumpy, accused him of bluffing. Bumpy smiled and told him to shoot. No one did. What Dutch's men didn't know was that Bumpy Johnson had been fighting since he was 10 years old in Charleston, South Carolina, through street fights, prison riots, and territory wars. He learned that violence has a rhythm, and in that basement, Bumpy controlled it. Tommy tightened his grip and warned him one last time. Bumpy moved. He didn't reach for a gun. He reached for the light. One punch shattered the bulb. Darkness followed, then chaos. Shots rang out, wild and panicked men firing at shadows, at sounds. Tommy screamed to hold fire, but fear doesn't follow orders. In the darkness, Bumpy became something else. He knew that room, every crate, every table, every corner. Dutch's men didn't. One by one they went down, not from Bumpy's bullets, but from his hands, their confusion and their own friendly fire. Screams echoed, bodies hit the floor, gunshots rang out. Tommy tried to rally them, yelling for the stairs, but Bumpy was already there. The violence lasted maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. Then silence. When the basement door finally opened, light spilled down the stairs. 11 bodies lay scattered, some dead, some broken, some unconscious, bleeding from gunshot wounds caused by their own men. One man was still breathing, sitting against the wall, shaking. Marty Delaney. Bumpy was gone. Marty crawled up the stairs, taking nearly 20 minutes every step, agony. He reached the street at sunrise, flagged a cab with blood-soaked money, and gasped. Bronx, Arthur Avenue. At 8:17 a.m., Marty stumbled into Dutch Schultz's club. Dutch was eating breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, reading the paper. He looked up and froze, asking where the others were. Marty shook his head and whispered, "They were all dead." He said, "Bumpy let him live." Dutch stood slowly stunned, asking why Marty said it was to deliver a message. He pulled out a single card, the ace of spades covered in blood, and placed it on the table, saying, "Harlem's not for sale, and if you send more men, send more cards. He's collecting a deck." Dutch stared at the card for a long time, then smiled, not happy but resigned. He said, "Bumpy had guts," and waved his men down, explaining that fighting someone who isn't afraid to die, someone smarter than you and backed by an entire neighborhood, costs everything. He burned the card and said they were done in Harlem. Years later, an old Cotton Club worker claimed Bumpy wasn't alone, saying 4 men locked the basement door from outside and that Bumpy could have killed all 12, but chose to let one live because killing starts wars. Humiliation ends them. Whether legend or truth, after that night, Dutch Schultz never sent another man to Harlem. Bumpy Johnson ruled the underworld for the next 35 years with strategy, intelligence, and a code. That ace of spades stayed framed in his office, a reminder that respect isn't given, it's taken. February 14th, 1933. 12 men went into a basement. 1 walked out, and Harlem was never the same. If this story hit you, subscribe for more untold legends. Drop a like if you think Bumpy Johnson was the smartest man in Harlem. And tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were Dutch Schultz.